Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFK journey video. In this video we're going to be going through the 5 different Clashfronts teams I'll be setting for this week. Based on whichever teams were like underperforming for me in the previous week, I've changed them out kind of. But the teams which were doing well for me and getting good win streaks, I've left them the same. Because those are the teams which have been doing well so far, so I'm not going to try to change them around much. So, this first team is the team which I've been using consistently for many Supreme Arena defense weeks in a row and also in Clashfronts. It always does pretty well for me. One interesting thing I've noticed from the replays is Floribel ultimate timing is usually pretty perfect for cancelling enemy Taileen's ultimate, and that is another advantage of having Floribel in this team. I know some people don't have Floribel, and then this team, I feel like you can replace Floribel for Parissa. I think that can be a fine option, but people said like if you replace Floribel for Lily May, this team is not as strong. I think it's because Lily May doesn't take as good advantage of the wilder buff tiles as, for example, other heroes. So that's one thing. But if you wanted to replace Scarlita in this team, you could replace it for Taleen. And Floribel for Parissa is probably what my recommendations would be. Otherwise, if you don't have even any of those heroes, I don't know. There's not really that many more options left. Like you could definitely go for like Aridin instead of the Floribel, but then you're gonna take him away from your Iron control team, and so that's something you just have to keep in mind. And Tide Call Spell, because I feel like this is the perfectly suited ability to this team. It gives you a lot of HP for tankiness, and it applies the effect like usually right when Scarlet is descending to protect her and also allow her to get off more damage. So this team is like one of my safest, best teams, and so I heavily recommend it. And you could replace Scarlita for Taleen if you wanted to. If your Taleen is more well built than Scarlita, I think it would work out well because Taleen does well in stalled teams as well. Like basically when your heroes can't die so quickly, it allows Taleen to revive multiple times. Okay, so here we have my Mauler team, and the change that we made, so last week I decided to put Coco on the buff tile instead of Mikola, and based on the performance, I think this is definitely doing better. Because one reason to have Coco on the buff tile is her Pato Smash ability. This will cause, if they are adjacent enemies, then Pato will smash the ground and stun them for 3 seconds, which is more crowd control, more value. It can be triggered every 8 seconds, and with more haste, it can be triggered even more frequently than that. And on the buff tile, like Coco doesn't really have much issue surviving. She can safely get off her damage reduction ultimate, and then that gives you a huge power swing. And Mikola, like, yeah, she was good on the buff tile because she's immune to fatal damage, but you know, if you have both Coco and Shakir running into the, or teleporting into the enemy team, taking the aggro, Mikola's kind of safe to do what she wants, sort of in the back of your team, and she can maybe even buff up Courage Sphere onto your Fresters, or maybe even your heroes in the front line. And Rainier overall is good, most importantly for providing the buff to Shakir. Like both of his attack charms, which will give him a 24% attack boost for 45 seconds, and if you have him at plus 10 exclusive equipment on Rainier, it will give him a damage reduction effect. But it isn't super important. You can run this with like plus 5 exclusive equipment. Shakir would be fine. It mainly also causes the opponent on the buff tile to take increased damage, and Shakir can try to kill that opponent. And I love Verdant Spell. Verdant Spell is my favorite artifact for this team. I've tried different options like Binding Spell, Great Sword Spell. Maybe if you had like a Lenya in this team, because Lenya can work with Maulers. If you have Tassi with Maulers, you want to have Tassi on this tile where Shakir is with the Resonating Spell. And I can give you an example of that team in my final team. But Verdant Spell is really good for this team because it gives really good stats, and it also gives clasp his buffs periodically, and pretty consistently, and it gives useful buffs. Penetration to your rogues like Shakir to increase his damage, and haste to your supports is really valuable as well. Like then even Coco can get off her Pato Smash on a lower cooldown. And it gives damage reduction to tanks, which is also really useful for keeping, like, making Fresters almost unkillable. And you control the on arena easily because you have a lot of heroes going to be in melee range. So overall, I'm a real fan of this team. This is one of my favorite teams, and it did really well for me last week. And as for other options, I think replacing Frester for Entendre or Brutus would be a good option. They're really good tanks. You could, in this team, if you're running the 3 Maulers, you could even replace it for Granny, for example, because Granny doesn't really have a good place, a good team that is fitting for her, at least in the teams that I'm running. But yeah, Entendre Brutus would be great as well. And then you could even maybe get, if for example your Mikola is not built, you could just use the 3 Maulers on Tundra, Coco, Shakira, and then run Rainier as well. And then run, like, for example, a form of healing. You could run Smokey. I'm gonna show you my final team. That is more like a free-to-play friendly team that you can try to run as well with the Maulers, and so I'll talk more about it when we get there. But basically, Maulers are really strong in PvP, and just running 3 Maulers and then either Tossie as a damage threat if you have a built with the resonating spell in the lower right tile, or for example, running Lenya. If you have Lenya built with Lenya on one of the buff tiles, like Shakir and Lenya on the buff tiles, would be really good for a team like this. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So here is my team, and I've changed this around because for 2 reasons. Number 1, I was like, okay, Smokey was working out pretty well in this team. I previously had Smokey over here behind the Almas, but then I decided, you know what? Do I really need the healing? And I mean, the healing is good because it also provides attack and haste buff for your team, but also, I think would fit even better in this team, because in this team you have such insane crowd control. Iron immediate ultimate, Almas is going to prolong the duration of the ultimate, and then also get so much value onto crowd control enemies. Like this, senses the vibrations of ley lines to locate all enemies affected by control effects and drops boulders on them, dealing this massive damage. Carolina also. So I was like, okay, let's run a full crowd control team, because the best place to run a team like this is Clashfronts, where the matchmaking is random. So you're like, you could run into a Lily May who counters this whole team comp pretty hard, but you could also go 5 matches in a row without running into Lily May, and then you're just going to be getting off massive like burst. And I also think in Clashfronts, when you get more fatigued, because like your attack is also reduced, your damage output is reduced, if you have more damage threats, you have a better potential of clearing and getting on a win streak. So I've tried that, and I've gone all out with the arcane spell, because resonating spell I'm using for my final team, I really need it on that one. And Arcane Spell is a good option for this team. It won't allow like Arden to charge up his energy quite as quickly, but that's fine. Like, I mean, he's going to charge up fast enough with the crowd control that we're going to be providing. And this also provides really good stats, attack, defense, penetration, and also we're going to have a lot of magic damage. The whole team is magical. So I like this team, but you can replace Elsa for Smokey as well if you want to. And even like you could replace Elsa with another damage deal like Brian. I think it wouldn't be a bad option, and Brian can even take the Lily May interruption. I'm still not entirely sure where the Brian should be placed to take the Lily May interruption, because I feel like there's still it is not still very consistent, but I think you would want to place Brian in the front of Iron if you want to run him. Yeah, and then you'll have to watch replays and see to make sure that it's working. Because, you know, on offense, actually, you want Brian in the back. So you might actually need Brian in the back. I don't know, it's just really, it's really confusing, like how things are working. But yeah, I would try Brian in the front first, front of Iron, and if it doesn't work, try him in the back. Okay, so that is what I would, that's my recommendation for this team. This is, I'm excited about this team. It's going to be one of the first times I tried it. If you want to go for a more defensive option, you could definitely go for something like Granny and Almas Tank. And then you can make good use of Granny here as well. You could even run Rowan if you have Rowan to be used, but if you're running a Lightbearer team, you'll need Rowan for that team. Okay, moving on to team number 4. So team number 4 is my Lightbearer team, and I really liked the video, like we uploaded all of the teams we showcased with the Maulers with Tossie. I think that's a really strong option. And for example, if you don't have Vala built and you're using Lily May on a different team, then I think it might even just be better for you to run Tossie with Maulers. But still, either way, Tossie with Lightbearers is still a very strong team. People in my guild have had really good win streaks with it, even without a high investment into their heroes. And this team, for me, has gotten a high I think this is the team that got me 5 or 6 win streak, and this is really solid because you have the Lightbearers and you have a triple damage threat, Lily May, Tossie, and Vala. And I think when you're going for, like, again, Clashfronts win streaks, you need to have multiple damage threats. If I only had Tossie here after getting fatigued, it just won't be enough to solo the enemy. Like, but if you have 3 different threats, it's easier. Each one can contribute a bit of damage to getting the opponents killed. So I like this. And Lily May, yeah, Lily May, you could definitely be using in a different team. You don't have to run her here. You could just run, like, again, another Granny instead of Lily May here as more tanking. or something like that. But I've been trying Lucius instead of Temesia to see if he'll do better, and it does seem like he's actually doing better for my team. But it might just be because we haven't done that many, like, we haven't tested it for that long, only 1 week. But like with the Valor Shield spell, Lucius is pretty much unkillable. Rowan is going to charge up his energy faster to cast more shielding for your team. And your team is going to usually be pretty grouped up and getting the advantage of the shield. But the problem is, like, Tassi is going to be in the enemy side, and the other heroes are going to be usually on your side. So Lucius sometimes will shield the Tassi, and then it's kind of wasted because his shield will also shield adjacent allies around the target location, and Tassi is going to be all by herself. So, but still, Lucius I think is a good option, but you can replace Lucius for Temesia. Arguably, that's even better, and that was a comp I was running before, because Temesia has more crowd control, but Lucius has like more tanking and shielding for your team. So, moving on to team number 5, we have gone for no Graveborn strategy. Instead, we're going for Maulers, because the thing with Graveborn faction talents, I think there are some teams that can make good use of it, but I think the Mauler faction talent overall is stronger. And I was able to put together another 3-man Mauler team to get the buff. Like, for example, I just have 3 Maulers in my other team and 3 Maulers in this team. And I think Maulers is a faction, just like Wilders, that you have a lot of them different ones built up that you'll be able to run 2 teams if you choose to do so. And I think the Mauler faction talents are just really strong, because you can get immune to fatal damage, the first fatal hit on your prime carriers on the buff tiles when you unlock the final node of stage 3. Which at this point, if you're prioritizing Maulertry, you should be able to get that unlocked. So the whole idea behind this team is you have Resonating Spell on Odie, which is a serious damage threat. Like, already he's going to begin the fight with pre-filled energy. Resonating Spell, when he casts his ultimate, going to give him that attack boost. He's going to hit really hard, and it's going to allow him to charge up his future ultimates even faster. Brutus is going to tank for your team really effectively. And then I wanted to have a healer in here. And Ludovic I have is built up, so I'm running Ludovic. If you want other options, again, I think definitely Lenya would be good in this team, or Tassi in this team as well. If you run Tassi in this team, and you wanted to still run Smokey, I would put Tassi on this buff tile in the back, like where Sylvina is with the Resonating Spell, because I think she is going to do better overall solo potential with the Resonating Spell. But yeah, and I think also Talene would fit pretty decently in this Mauler team as well. I've seen people use Talene with Maulers, in which case, I don't know if you would want Talene on the buff tile, or if you would just want her off the buff tile. You could try both options. But that would not be a bad choice either. And really, Ludovic is not actually needed because we have Smokey to heal, and the advantage of Smokey being teleported into the enemy team is actually good for you, because then he's in a position that he's going to be buffing up more of your team. Especially with Odie being teleported in, Brutus going in there, Sylvina jumping in there. All of them are going to be grouped up so Smokey can get value healing and attack buff for them, because otherwise the problem is Smokey gets left behind. All of your team end up entering the enemy zone, and Smokey can't even reach all of your members. And that's why the buff tile is good for him for Maulers. But yeah, Ludovic, he's here for the charm bonus for Odie for more additional healing for the team. With the Supreme Plus, he has some stuns in his kit. I don't know whether Ludovic honestly is the best option here, but I couldn't think of a better one. Like, I mean, I could go for another tank like Temesia or Granny, but I just feel like that won't provide that much. Could go for Entendre as well, like go for more tankiness for the front. Potentially that could be better, but I think this will be pretty good. And so yeah, I think the Odie on the buff tile with the Resonating Spell and Smokey on the other one, this is a budget Mauler team, which is going to be pretty good for a lot of people. But I think Ludovic people might not have, and then you could just replace Ludovic for honestly really anything. Like Entendre would be a good option, Granny, Temesia, Cicia even could work. It kind of depends on which heroes you have built up and ascended, and just try running them. But yeah, I would run one of those. Okay, and I mean, Sylvina can be good on the buff tiles, but I think she's not going to be as good as the Smokey and the Odie. And I have her to take the advantage of the charm bonus of Smokey. It's a minor bonus, but it is some damage reduction and energy on hit and a shield, so I think it could be good for her. The problem is you really want Sylvina jumping onto a buff tile enemy, because usually those are the targets. So I'm hoping that, you know, if the opponent doesn't have any hero positioned here, then Sylvina can actually jump onto the buff tile enemy. But if they have a hero here, then she's going to jump on that hero instead, but I think it should still be fine. So overall, I'm happy with this final team. I think this will be I think this will do better than the Graveborn team I had here. Previously, I had a team of Sylvina, Ludovic, and Viperion. and I found that that team wasn't doing so great, so I thought I should probably replace it. However, I didn't do enough testing with that team, and like I was running actually I think a full 5-man Graveborn team with Nero, Igor, Viperon, Sylvina, Ludwig, and that wasn't doing great. But maybe if I switched it up and had 3 Graveborns, 2 Maulers or something like that, it could be good. But I really wanted to make good use of Odie, and I think this team is going to make the best use of Odie, and a lot of people will have their Odie built up well, so I think this is a good team to try. But you just might have to replace Ludwig for something else. But I don't think Ludwig is so essential to this team. So anyway, guys, hopefully this was helpful. Good luck on Clashfronts this week. This is the final stage, stage 4. And then this Clashfronts season, I guess, is going to come to an end. And I'm hoping that it's going to cycle back and we can keep doing Clashfronts for the whole of this season. Like, but this is the final stage, basically, and there's 4 rounds that we're gonna have. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and good luck with these teams. Or if you have any other team recommendations, you can share them in the comment section, or you can message them to us on our Discord server. There's a link to that in the description of this video. But thank you for watching, guys. That's gonna be it for this one. Until the next video, everyone, peace out for now.